Hi everybody, it's Program Ranger Shea here for Storytime and Craft. Today we are reading The Tale of Peter Rabbit by Beatrix Potter. This is actually a book from my childhood, from my personal library. And since this summer we are kind of going to travel all over the world and read stories from around the world. This one is from England. And one of the things that kids do in England is they like to make willow wands. And so we are going to make a wand today out of nature. Now in Texas is where I'm at, and willow trees don't grow everywhere. There's a few here and there, but grapevine, wild grapevine, let me show you some, grows a lot here. And so I am going to be using some grapevine to make our wand, our little nature wand today. So you'll need some grapevine and maybe some flowers or some other things to add to your wand, or you can always use another kind of vine or something kind of stick-like, but that can still bend. All right, so let's read The Tale of Peter Rabbit. Here's little Peter Rabbit there, our classic little bunny. Once upon a time, there were 4 little rabbits, and their names were Flopsy, Mopsy, Cottontail, and Peter. They lived with their mother in a sandbank underneath the root of a very big fir tree. Now, my dears, said old Mrs. Rabbit, one morning, you may go into the fields or down the lane, but don't go into Mr. McGregor's garden. Your father had an accident there. He was put in a pie by Mrs. McGregor. Now run along and don't get into mischief. I am going out. And here she is putting on their little clothes so they can go out, but not to get into any mischief. Then old Mrs. Rabbit took a basket and her umbrella and went through the woods to the baker's. She bought a loaf of brown bread and 5 currant buns. The bunnies in my backyard don't get dressed and get little baskets to go to the woods. Sorry for that little shake there. Flopsy, Mopsy, and Cottontail were good little bunnies and went down the lane to gather blackberries. Sounds yummy. But Peter, who was very naughty, ran straight away to Mr. McGregor's garden and squeezed under the gate. Naughty Peter Rabbit. First, he ate some lettuce and some French beans, and then he ate some radishes. And then, feeling rather sick, he went to look for some parsley. That will help his tummy. But around the corner of the cucumber frame, from whom should he meet? Mr. McGregor. Oh no. Do you think Mr. McGregor's very happy he has a bunny in his garden eating his vegetables? Mr. McGregor was on his hands and knees planting out some cabbages, but he jumped up and ran after Peter, waving a rake and calling out, "Stop, thief!" There he is running with his rake after Peter. Peter was most dreadfully frightened. He rushed all over the garden, for he had forgotten the way back to the gate. He lost one of his shoes among the cabbages and the other shoe among the potatoes. After losing them, he ran on all 4 legs and went even faster, so that I think he might have got away altogether if he had not forgotten not unfortunately run into a gooseberry net and got caught up in the large buttons in his jacket. It was a little blue jacket with brass buttons, quite new. So his mommy had just gotten him that jacket and it caught him in the gooseberry net. Oh no. Peter gave himself up for loss, oh no, and shed big tears, but his sobs were overheard by some fellow sparrows, who flew to him in great excitement and implored him to exert himself. Come on, Peter. Nice little sparrows. Mr. McGregor came up with a sheave which he intended to pop upon the top of Peter, but Peter wiggled out just in time, leaving his jacket behind him. And rushed into the tool shed and jumped into a can. It would have been a beautiful thing to hide in if it had not had so much water in it. So he went to hide in that water can, but it had water in it. Mr. McGregor was quite sure that Peter was somewhere in the tool shed, perhaps hidden beneath a flower pot. He began to turn them over carefully, looking under each. Presently, Peter sneezed. Mr. McGregor was after him in no time. He heard him sneeze. And tried to put his foot upon Peter, who jumped out the window, upsetting 3 plants. The window was too small for Mr. McGregor, and he was tired of running after Peter. He went back to work. Peter sat down to rest. Oh, he was out of breath and trembling with fright. He had not the least idea which way to go. Also, he was very damp from sitting in that can. After a time, he began to wander about, going lippity, lippity, not very fast, and looking all around. He found a door in a wall, but it was locked, and there was no room for a fat little rabbit to squeeze underneath. So an old mouse was running in and out under the stone door steps, carrying peas and bees to her family in the wood. Peter asked her the way to the gate, but she had such a large pea in her mouth that she could not answer. She only shook her head at him, and Peter began to cry. And there's the little mouse with the little pea in her mouth, and she couldn't tell Peter which way to the gate. Poor Peter. He had not made a very good choice. Then he tried to find his way straight across the garden, but he became even more and more puzzled. Presently he came to a pond where Mr. McGregor filled his water cans. A white cat was staring at some goldfish and sat very, very still. But now and then the tip of her tail twitched as if it were alive. Peter thought it best to go away without speaking to her. He had heard about cats from his cousin, little Benjamin Bunny. There's that little cat looking at the goldfish in the pond. He went back towards the tool shed, but suddenly, quite close to him, he heard the noise of a hoe. Scratch, 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 scratch. Peter scuttered underneath the bushes, but presently, as nothing happened, he came out and climbed upon a wheelbarrow and peeped over. The first thing he saw was Mr. McGregor hoeing onions. His back was turned towards Peter, and beyond him was the gate. Oh no, he has to get past Mr. McGregor to get to the gate. Peter got down very quietly over off the wheelbarrow and started running as fast as he could along the straight walk behind some black currant bushes. Mr. McGregor caught sight of him at the corner, but Peter did not care. He slipped under the gate and was safe at last into the wood outside the gate. Outside the garden. Mr. McGregor hung up the little jacket and shoes for a scarecrow to frighten the birds. Where did he get that jacket and little shoes? I think those were Peter's. Peter never stopped running or looking behind him until he got home to the big fir tree. He was so tired that he flopped down upon the nice, soft sand on the floor of the rabbit hole and shut his eyes. His mother was busy cooking, and she wondered what he had done with his clothes. It was the second little jacket and pair of shoes that Peter had lost in a fortnight. He keeps losing his clothes and shoes. I am sorry to say that Peter was not very well during that evening. His mother put him to bed and made him some chamomile tea, and she gave him a dose of it to Peter, 1 tablespoon to be taken at bedtime. And there's Flopsy, Mopsy, and Cottontail, his siblings, sitting there watching Mom make the chamomile tea. But Flopsy, Mopsy, and Cottontail had bread and milk and blackberries for supper. Ooh, I think that might taste a lot yummier. The end. So that was a story by Beatrix Potter from England. And so now we are going to do an English craft. Again, we are going to make little wands, little nature wands. They call them willow wands because they make them out of willow trees in England. And since I'm in Texas, we're going to make them out of wild grapevine. Okay, so I'm going to find kind of the thicker part. So on the end, it's almost too supple or soft. So I'm going to go down to where it's a little bit thicker and harder, okay? And I'm going to take off all, see how this is like the big main part? I'm going to take off all the ends of my grapevine. And I kind of pinch it off with my fingers and pull opposite of the way it's growing. So it's growing up, and I'm going to pinch and pull opposite, so I'm going to pull down. It's growing up, I'm going to pinch and pull down. I'm going to pull all these off so that we have a nice piece of vine for our wand. I think that, now this wand is going to be kind of crooked, isn't it? Wonder if I have a different piece. Nope. This is the piece I have. So my wand is going to be extra magical and turn a little bit. Now, I think I want it to be about 3 feet long. So on me, that's about that long, 3 feet. And then I'm going to take my fingernails, because I didn't bring any scissors, and I broke the end off. Okay? Now here's the tricky part. I want each of my parts of my star to be about the same length. So for me, I'm going to use my finger, and I'm going to measure some parts while I'm making this wand. Okay? Now, it's kind of tricky to watch, and you may be able to find a better video online, but we will try together to make this. So this is about how long I want my wand to be. So I'm going to break it right here, but not all the way through. See how I kind of kinked it, but I didn't rip it off. Now I'm going to measure it, and I'm going to kink at another spot. Okay, so a second kink. Boop. And the shape I'm trying to make is a star. You can make whatever shape you want. So I'm going to go this way. Then I'm going to measure again the length of my finger for me. And I'm going to kink it again. Kink. Or I kind of make a little elbow, little hinge in my grapevine. Now, so here I'm going over the big part, the handle of my wand. So I'm going over it. Now I need to kind of sew it a little bit underneath. I'm going to go under it and then over the other side. Do you see what I'm doing? So I'm going on the opposite side. Here it's on towards the camera. Now I'm going to go towards me, and then on the other side I'm going to go towards the camera. You see what I'm doing? Do you see that? All right. Oh, I need to actually go down. What am I doing? Silly Program Ranger Shea. All right. How do you make a star? You're going to go this way. Yes. Behind, and then in front, and pull it out. So do you see what I've done so far? So I went behind and then in front. Now I'm going to kink it again. Kink. And I'm going to go the opposite and kind of go around. So I'm kind of sewing it around the pieces. So I made a little star. In and out, in and out. As you can see, I'm going to try and go closer. I went sometimes in front and sometimes in back to kind of weave it and hold it in place. You can play with it a little bit as you go. Now, I left a little piece so I can hold it onto the handle. And I'm going to take, do you remember we talked about that supple part? So I'm going to actually use this supple part or soft other end of the grapevine, and I'm going to use it kind of like rope, hopefully. My other one worked just great. So here's my little other part of the grapevine that was too soft to use as a wand, but I'm going to use it as string. So I'm going to tie these two parts together on my wand. So the first one I'm going to do one little tie, kind of like when I tie my shoes. A fast little tie just to get it in place. Okay? And then I want to add some flowers that I found. And grab my flowers. Whoop. I grabbed some flowers from here at Tom Wooten. And then you know what? When I was looking for flowers, I found a feather, and I thought that would be cool to add too. So I'm going to add the feather and the flowers, and then I'm going to use that piece of grapevine that was supple or soft and tie the flowers and the feather, hopefully, to my wand. Hopefully you guys can see this tie. You can get some help from mom and dad on tying. That's probably the hardest part. Oh, and now mine broke. So my piece of grapevine keeps wanting to break. I'm going to get some more other pieces of grapevine to use as a rope too, just to help reinforce. So far I've tied it once, but if I only tie it once, it's going to fall apart. So how about this? I've got some really long grass here at my feet. I'm going to try some grass to do my nature wand and use grass as more string. So I'm going to wrap it around, and actually I'm going to wrap it a couple times. I'm going to wrap it the other way. All right, you guys see how I've wrapped it with the grass? Now I'm going to tie it. I'm going to try and tie it on your side so you can see me tie it with the grass. And try not to break the grass as I go. I'm going to try and tie it the other way, so kind of do a square knot. So I'm going to have to turn it towards me so I can square knot it. Whoop, there we go. Whoa! Here is my other magic willow wand. Here's the one I made earlier. So it's a little bit shorter. And this one's a little long and curvy. And I added fun nature things that I found. And this is a fun thing that kids in England do out in nature. So I thought I would share that with y'all. Again, this is Program Ranger Shea with Capital Area Council. And these story times are brought to you from Camp Tom Wooten in Bastrop, Texas, and provided to you by Tech Lab Camp. So techlab.camp, look us up. It's a fun camp this summer, as well as Capital Area Council, Boy Scouts of America, and the International Scouting Committee. Thanks, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed Peter Rabbit and kind of going on a trip with me to England to read a story that was made in England and one of their favorites, along with doing a fun nature craft from England. Thanks for joining me today, everybody. Be safe. Happy scouting.